Welcome to Aesthetically Speaking with Felicia Lisa Middleton.
Hello and welcome again to Aesthetically Speaking, where we are building conversations about Philadelphia's locations. This season 2 of Aesthetically Speaking, we're discussing all things food facilities, and the planning and building of restaurants and commercial kitchens. Today, we decided to have a preemptive show regarding the current crisis our nation is in, and it's necessary because of the changes that will take place in the planning and building of restaurants. I've been speaking with Victoria Wilson, one of our guests, as well as Yolanda Lockhart Davis, our other guest, about the changes that have been taking place. We've been blogging about it. We've been talking about it. We've been talking with colleagues about materials. So today I have a panel of professionals, all who have worked in restaurant projects and in construction, to talk about the post-COVID commercial kitchen and restaurant, the post-COVID-19 commercial kitchen and restaurant. So I'd like to welcome Victoria Wilson, John Sears, and Yolanda Lockhart Davis. And I will give a brief introduction, and then I'll let you also give a brief talk about what you do and how you're going to contribute to this show. So our first guest is Victoria Wilson, the Queen of Green. Victoria is out of Chicago, Illinois, but works all around the country. She's a green project manager with Naturally Urban Environmental Incorporated. Welcome, Victoria.
Thank you for having me.
And our next guest is John Sears, professional engineer and mechanical engineer and the director of engineering services with JP MEP Design Consultants, LLC. And welcome, John. John's worked on several projects with me. He is my go-to engineer for mechanical services for restaurants. And our next, last but not least, is Yolanda Lockhart Davis, professional chef, food service consultant, and owner of Salt, Pepper, and Soul, LLC, contributing author to our book entitled A Complete Guide to Creating Tasty Spaces. And Yolanda has worked with me as well on several projects, including projects in the Bourse. So we want to welcome everybody, and I'll give each one of you a couple of minutes to talk about who you are and what you do. First, we have Victoria Wilson.
Well, first of all, thank you, Lisa, for welcoming us to this discussion in this current environment and atmosphere. At Naturally Urban Environmental Incorporated, we are what you would classify as a green enterprise, and we pretty much focus on setting the bar when it comes down to urban development throughout the cities and communities. Our focus is to encourage sustainability through advocacy, education, and renovation in our communities. And very recently, we were just asked to come on board with the National Institute for Environmental Health and Safety as an instructor on COVID-19 and partnerships in workplace development.
That is awesome, and I'm happy to have you here.
Thank you.
Next, we have John Sears. John, give us a little bit about what you do and your company.
Sure. I'm John Sears. I am the owner and director of engineering services for J2 MEP Design Consultants. We are MEP engineers. We design mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and fire protection systems and a variety of building uses. Currently, our focus has been in the housing market, obviously restaurants, and places of worship. That's kind of our niche right now, and I like it.
And thank you, John. Again, like I said, I've called John, I think we're on our 4th restaurant and probably 5th project, because I've called you for a housing project as well. So thank you, John. It's good working with you. And last but not least is Yolanda Lockhart Davis with Salt, Pepper, and Soul. So give us an introduction about what you do in your company.
Felicia, thank you so much. I am the owner of Salt, Pepper, and Soul. It's been my company since 2013. I started off doing personal chef and small event catering work. I migrated into food service consulting in 2015, 2016 in order to bring my 20-year background in project management and software development into the food space. So I've been helping restaurants and food businesses with food safety, strategic planning, and restaurant technology. Particularly in this environment, I've been writing articles for LinkedIn and also been advising restaurant owners and food business owners about how to move forward, specifically as it relates to food safety. I've been telling people now is the time, while you're closed, while you're doing limited operations, to focus on strategic planning. Now is the time. If you have not previously embraced technology, let me help you figure out the best technology solutions for your business.
And we thank you. Well, you're doing a lot during this time. We've been shut down. And last but not lastly, I'll introduce myself. If the audience doesn't already know, I am Felicia Lisa Middleton. I am the Foodie Builder, owner of Urban Aesthetics LLC. The Foodie Builder is our premier brand where we focus on restaurants and food facilities. I'm a back of house specialist. I specialize in the design and planning of commercial facilities as well as food service facilities. I started my background in designing restaurants roughly about 17 years ago when I worked for a firm where we only designed the food lines in schools and food facilities in casinos. So I fell in love with it when I worked for that company and continued working on those type of projects throughout the year. And when I started my own business, that has always been a goal, to focus on mainly restaurants and food facilities. So a few years ago, I started the Foodie Builder, the brand, where we focus on providing a complete planning and building service for you from the beginning to end. And I'm so proud of the community that I'm a part of. It's a big community when it comes to food. It's chefs, engineers, designers, the specialists that are on this panel right now. John, you and I were just out on the job yesterday, and I'm so happy that I get to work with such great people, such knowledgeable people, and we can just pull together our knowledge. Briefly, wanted to tell you just recently, Yolanda knows about this. I wrote an article about the Safer Kitchen, the post-COVID commercial kitchen. Safer standing for it's an acronym for sanitary, antimicrobial, I'm sorry, it's hard. Okay, sanitary, antimicrobial, fastidious, eco-friendly restaurants and food facilities. So it's a blog I just posted on LinkedIn as well as my website. And I'm also going to have Yolanda's blogs on the website where we want to just discuss what the post-COVID kitchen is going to look like. And there's going to be so many different parts of it as far as social distancing is concerned, as far as air quality is concerned, materials. I mean, when it comes to the post-COVID kitchen, we're going to be looking at safer, not only cleaner kitchens, but also a safer way to build these kitchens. And that's where, with talking with Victoria, we were on a Zoom and we were talking with a contractor, and he was providing information about clean drywall that you can use. It cleans the air. And there's so many different hands that can go into materials. I was talking with another contractor about paint that kills germs. And I was talking with an architect about MERV
filtration.
MERV filtration. And also, when I started having these discussions, I decided to just do some research. And Yolanda has been doing research as well. We've been just looking at how the changes will take place in restaurants. And with the MERV, you can increase your filtration and have better air quality, clean the air better. And when I wrote my article, what I talked about was all these different materials. I didn't get too much into MERV because I don't know a lot about it, but that's why I'm glad I have John here to talk about it. So just to start with, when it comes to cleaner kitchens, Yolanda, you and I always talk about safe kitchens.
Yes.
and kitchen quality and health department standards.
Yes.
So let's just start the conversation rolling about that and how what you think as a chef, as someone who's always in the kitchen or managing a kitchen, what do you think the consumers may start looking for as far as the back of house is concerned?
Well, one of the things that I'm actually glad to see come out of this pandemic is the fact that more attention is being paid to food safety. Number one, the definition of food safety has been expanded to workplace safety in terms of restaurants and food businesses. So the idea that you can start with the actual walls and floors and make materials that are going to be antimicrobial. I've been talking with companies that are offering cleaning, disinfecting, and sanitizing programs.
Awesome.
That's pretty critical. I've also been, and these are also biological engineers, in addition to looking at all of the EPA registered products. I've been telling people they can only ever use EPA registered products now that are intended and designed to kill the SARS virus, which is also linked to the COVID-19 coronavirus. So the fact that you are now expanding the use of your products, and now that you're expanding the use of your attention to food safety, this should all be incorporated into your marketing. The last article I published was about the two sides of safety, not just what you're actually doing, how you're going to make people feel. People are going to need to feel safe when they come into your establishment. How can you do that? By letting them know, communicating all the things that you're doing to keep the atmosphere safe, to keep you as the guest safe. So that was my last article, The Two Sides of Safety. I have another article coming out hopefully on Monday or early next week, Monday or Tuesday, and that's going to be revolving around the menu and how to design your menu so it is safer transmission, better quality, still maintaining the integrity of the food. So food safety has expanded into absolutely every aspect of the business.
Wow.
And I'm actually glad to see that. So now you can't just think about the food and the plate presentation. You have to think about, can this be transmitted safely? How are we doing tamper-proof packaging? How are we incorporating tamper-proof packaging from start to finish? How are we being sure to let the customer know that this food is safe, whether you're going to have it in our dining room or whether you're going to have it in your home? The food is safe. These are all the measures that we're taking to make sure, to ensure your safety.
Wow, that is amazing. I mean, just what you said about the menu, you just blew my mind even more. Like I keep reading things and my mind is getting blown by so many different stages that this is going through. Now, when you talked about packaging, that's huge too, because environmental. And I don't know if anybody are familiar with the Green Restaurant Association. There's actually an association that will standardize your restaurant as a green restaurant. Green restaurants will go into the whole safer restaurant concept because we want to have a greener atmosphere. We want to have a cleaner atmosphere. So when we talk about all the different pieces that go together, the menu, the packaging, we have to consider green as well. And we have to consider, I love all the different things that you're looking at. You're looking at the menu. I keep hearing people talking about social distancing in the dining area, but it goes so far beyond that.
Absolutely.
So just to pull in the green, I want to talk with Victoria a little bit about some green concepts you might see, just even from the building industry that would go into just to give a little bit about Victoria. Victoria also does testing in different areas of environmental. So how is that going to also play with a post-COVID kitchen, or how can you see it playing in a kitchen?
Yeah, from my perspective, there are so many hierarchy controls that are going to be implemented inside of these spaces. You're going to be looking at the physical removal of actual hazards. You're going to be looking at reducing and replacing all the hazards inside of those places, as well as looking at isolation from people from hazards. as well as changing the way that we work, as Yolanda had previously mentioned. So we're talking about looking at ventilation systems. We're talking about looking at shields. We're talking about, instead of having a traditional walk-in establishment that you're going to probably be utilizing drive-throughs more frequently, you're talking about controlling the environment where the materials of the food are going to be prepared inside of, which might also be putting guard shields up. So there's so many different components that are going to just manifest out of this whole process. And more than anything, from an environmental standard, we're going to be looking at all of the systems inside of that particular facility. Air filtration is going to be number one. You know, how the air is being recycled and circulated inside those environments. Again, we're going to be going to non-porous surfaces to make sure that we're able to truly be able to sanitize and clean those environments and reduce the risk of spreading those hazards. And as Yolanda had previously mentioned, I've been in contact with quite a few corporations and companies who are ready to go into those restaurants, work facilities, and disinfect them after hours. Because that's going to be so essential in making sure that we're reducing the risk of the individuals who will be coming in contact with these environments on a regular basis. Biohazard is one of the biggest concerns when it comes down to reducing the interaction of individuals with these viruses.
I love what you said. That sanitization is huge. Yolanda and I talk about that all the time, about the kitchen part of it. I mean, I always go back to the kitchen. I mean, restaurants should be clean everywhere, but the kitchen is huge. And sanitizing these restaurants, oh my God. Yeah. I see that I see health departments making that top of the list. But you mentioned air quality, and you mentioned it more than once. And this is where I'm going to pull John in, but I just want to say one quick thing. I saw someone post a meme, and it was a meme of an air filter, and it had about this inch thickness of dust, and it says people are going around worrying about wearing masks when their air filters at home look like this.
Absolutely.
Indoor air quality. When I was in college, I was for a few years I was working with it was called the Clean Air Council in Philadelphia, and indoor air quality was huge even then, and it's huge now, because you can literally get sick from the quality of the air inside. So John, let's talk a little bit about just some ideas, or what you might even, this is not set in stone, but just ideas of what can go, or systems that you think can go into making air quality cleaner and better in restaurants and food facilities.
Okay, so let me start off by telling you how our process starts, in not just commercial kitchens, but in any application as far as an HVAC system is concerned. Each application is our work is dictated by how the space is used, how the spaces are configured, what happens within the spaces, and then we apply common engineering principles to them. Now, when it comes to commercial kitchen, from an HVAC standpoint, there's two areas that we're talking about: the food preparation area, and then there's the area where the customers reside. Now, by code, the HVAC system or systems that serve the customer area cannot physically communicate with the food prep area. And to understand that is to understand on a very basic level how HVAC systems work. Typically, we have supply air, outside air, and then return air.
Yes.
So in a commercial kitchen, you aren't returning air. You're exhausting air through the kitchen hood, which is over the cooking line. That air is exhausted out, and you're replacing that air through a makeup air unit. The system that serves the customer area outside the area can't return the air from the kitchen through that unit for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
But as you all know, kitchen designs have kind of changed lately, where It's open. You
They're
can
open, yes.
see the cooking line, which is great. So what us engineers have sneakily done is try to condition the cooking area and still adhere to the code. So because it's open, we passively introduce conditioned air through that opening just to give the food prep people, a little break. That air doesn't get returned to that system though; it gets exhausted through the kitchen exhaust hood, and through the magic of the calculator, we figure out how to manage the pressurization of both the kitchen area and the customer area. Now we throw into the mix this whole issue that we're dealing with now. So I say it's simplistically complicated because the technology that's going to come into play here is not new technology. It's a new application of existing technology, and a lot of it really, has been ignored because there's some cost factors involved, and everybody wants to build cheaper, and then go on to start selling food and be done with it. Those days are over.
Yes, I completely agree.
Those days are over. So here's how I look at it. Here's how this process is going to start from our end. And it's kind of like a continuation of what we do anyway. The first thing I do, and you kind of saw this in our meeting yesterday, I have to get an understanding of what's happening in the kitchen. It starts with the cooking line. It starts there. What's the cooking line? What's going under the hood? And then we build out from there. What happens outside the food prep area? Then we start talking about how to comfort control, how the outside the cooking area, and then within the cooking area. Now we're adding in. Now we have how do we condition the cooking area? How do we condition the customer area? And now how do we protect them from not only from a comfort standpoint, but from a biological standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
So let me jump real quick into the MERV thing. So there's all kinds of filtration. There's a really wide range of filtration that's available through all types of HVAC systems. Typically in the kitchen hood, you have the washable filters that are right in the hood. Mm-hmm. That's to handle the grease. That's one thing. The systems outside of the cooking area, you have anywhere from, hopefully you don't have the cheap fiberglass filters, polyester, all the way up to HEPA filtration. Well, HEPA filtration up until now is typically reserved for healthcare facilities, pharmaceutical, high-end manufacturing, where you really have to control the particulates that are in the area. Now you're going to start seeing, so let me tell you what MERV stands for. I forget it all the time too, so I wrote it down.
I understand.
Yeah, and I'm old too. So that minimum efficiency reporting values. So basically, your filtration is designed to capture particulates in a particular size range, from little teeny tiny to like microscopic rocks. And MERV is a measurement of how efficient that particular type of filtration is at removing these particulates.
Do they have ratings?
Yes. Yeah. Okay. So MERV rating is 1 to 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, and 16. And each one of those MERV ratings, if you kind of like look at the chart to the right, the efficiency on removing these particles in sizes from 0.3 to 10 microns, the higher the MERV rating, the more efficient they are. The more of this crap it captures. So if you have a MERV 1 through 4, you're still looking at capturing 0.3 microns to 10, but a MERV 1's only going to get 20% of it.
Now, what's typical for a restaurant?
Well, see, now in a restaurant, we haven't really concerned us. And in the cooking area, restaurant the seating area. The seating area has been like, okay, let's put some MERV 12s, MERV 14s in that air handling unit. Those days are gone as of COVID-19.
Agree.
Because of a study I saw that was in China, where they found out people in the restaurant were contaminating themselves, infecting themselves from the system that served them, not the cooking area, but the system that served the restaurant area.
Really?
Because of the filtration, because that's not a one-through system. The kitchen ventilation system is one through. You bring air in, take it right
and you
back
have the
out.
makeup air.
Yeah. So you're not really recirculating the air. So that's kind of like, a side issue. But the customer area in addressing this issue is now a point of focus, because now let's say you have one person that's infected with COVID-19 in your restaurant, and he's breathing, talking, doing whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And that air is coming back through that system. That's not a one-through system. It's getting returned. And
then the different units are over different tables, and we're talking about social distancing, but we're not thinking about that air being recirculating, this blowing back down on you in the different areas.
Absolutely.
Wow, incredible.
So
this is going to be amazing.
I was literally on the phone with an engineer that works for Daikin. That's the HVAC equipment manufacturer, and they're really in front of a lot of things, technology. And I was on the phone with was completely for a different project, but we got into this conversation, and he was telling me all the things that they have, and they're giving seminars on it. It's existing technology that are now going to be applied on a big level, not just restaurants. I told them about this conversation we're going to have. So there's some things out here that we're probably going to start seeing. Higher MERV rated filtration in the units, and possible application of a device called a UV light within the
that cleans
within the system. Now that UV light isn't really going to speak to the breathing zone. That's where we sit. And our breathing zone is like from the floor up to a certain height. That's a breathing zone. That UV light within the system doesn't exactly address the breathing zone. It just addresses the equipment, cooling coils, the heating coils. You're basically sanitizing the internal components of your HVAC unit. Outside, we're going to be looking at things called bipolar ionization units. That's basically putting an electric charge in the air that disrupts the DNA of these microbials. You're going to start seeing them. That's going to be part of the process that kind of gets married with everything else that you're doing sanitation-wise.
So pretty much it's going to be kind of like a scrubbing process for the air in those environments. So versus having a traditional downdraft, you're going to have an updraft that's going to have to take the air up, and it's going to have to come into contact either with a disinfectant solution maybe, or another kind of MERS higher level filter system before it gets returned and back into the system, is what you're thinking?
Yeah, I think it's going to be threefold. It'll be higher level filtration. It'll be UV application within the unit itself. And then probably within the breathing zone, these units called bipolar ionization that actually scrubs the air as it moves through the breathing zone. Mm-hmm. So it'll be triple redundancy. There's a cost associated with that, but there's also a cost associated with your customers dying.
I agree. And now, John, when we do this, will we look at the way the seating is arranged in the restaurant to see how? Because I'm sure code is going to, now you allow 3 feet between tables. I'm sure code is going to change that a little bit. Well, I'm not going to say I'm sure, but I can see that being changed where code is concerned. Are they going to look at, I guess they're going to look at occupancy more than seating.
Well, I would like to think that if we do all the contact, the surface level protocol, address the unit itself, and then address the air in the breathing zone, you may not have to do that because
Okay.
because our design process begins with the space. Like I said, I don't care what the application is. I design around how people are going to live and function within that space, not the other way around. I'm not going to design my system and you go, well, because I designed my system this way, you have
don't
to
have the
see
space just sees that way.
No, you show me the layout. I got to figure out how to make it work. you know what I mean?
Now I can see that we're talking about kitchens that are going to come into effect afterwards, because we know that restaurants are already existing.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, even looking at the operations right now of restaurants that have to get back up and rolling, we can't. I can see that's not going to play. I'm sure what we're probably going to see is social distancing more. We're going to see changes to the seating for existing restaurants. But some of the things we're talking about can only really be applied to newer restaurants that are going to come into effect.
Yeah.
Or can you modify a system? I guess that's really what I'm trying to say.
One of my biggest things in which I've been thinking about throughout this whole process, because we are dealing with current existing structural facilities, is more so about implementation on the managerial and leadership level, the employee participation and practices, and understanding communication controls, education, and training. Because we're at this point, we're at a society that's still learning so much about the mutation, the movement of this virus. And so it's more of a responsibility about us taking what we know in the safety aspects, especially when it comes down to food and safety and sanitation, and actually applying it with strong discipline and actions. Me and my girlfriend were just talking, because she's actually a caterer, and she was like, you remember back in the day we used to get that bucket of water and use that same solution and wash those tables down? Those days are dead. You can't do
I
that
agree.
anymore.
I agree.
Those tablecloths, they're dead. They're gone. So now, again, when we were talking about utilizing those non-porous surfaces, wood might no longer be utilized inside of restaurant spaces anymore. Now we might be using all stainless steel. And so when we're talking about that, we're talking about making sure that you know how to don and doff your PPE and properly dispose of it, especially when you're dealing with food preparation. We're talking about lines of industrial facilities. One of the biggest concerns, especially in the industrial preparation of food, is how many people are coming in contact with those meat products, those produce products in those lines, and now putting up those shields and utilizing plastic gloves to stay stationary in place when you're doing your task or duty along the food chain line might be something implemented inside of these systems. But preparedness and knowledge and proper training are going to be our first line of defense when it comes down to reopening society versus trying to change how we currently are operating. Yes, that's going to happen, because this is just an example of what's to come.
Yeah, life is going to change.
It's changing.
Now, Yolanda, I want to ask you a quick question, because what Victoria is saying is very important. Do you see the restaurant back of house requiring masks? Just now, I'm only thinking of this because I watch TV a lot, and I see a lot of foreign countries that do this. In a particular foreign country, I'm always watching their TV shows. They wear shields when even now. Before this even started, they wore plastic shields that came up kind of halfway up to their nose when they prepared food. Do you see something like that in the preparation of food?
They may or may not wear the plastic shields, but they're definitely wearing the face masks. I've shared the resources I found where restaurant owners, food business owners can get face masks, and I've shared those resources. I actually included that resource in my last article. Back of house staff are definitely going to have to wear masks. They're going to have to be retrained in hand washing. Hand washing is critical. Hand washing
really is.
Suggestion. So now you have to wash your hands a certain way. You have to wash your hands for 20 seconds. You have to wash your hands before you touch your mask to take your mask off. You have to wash your hands before you put your mask on. So this is in the kitchen. Yes, the kitchen is hot. part of what I do is get involved in training. I love what Victoria said. So training is going to be critical, not just training, but training and retraining. I tell people training is a process, not an event. This is not a one-time training. I might come in, I'm going to come back in 30 days. I'm going to let you know where your knowledge and practice gaps are. I'm going to observe. I'm going to give you a detailed report. I'm talking with a gentleman who owns I Spy Hospitality, where he would typically review restaurants based on the hospitality practices. Now he's reviewing restaurants based on their food safety practices, and I'm hoping to get more involved with what he's doing. So one of the many calls that I've been involved with, a gentleman named Al Paris, he's a vision strategist for 1 Degree Coaching. He came up with a tagline, "Safety is the new hospitality."
I like that.
Throughout the entire industry, everybody has been focused on hospitality as one particular aspect, making sure the guest is comfortable, giving the guests what they want. Now the focus is on safety. Now people who work in the restaurants and food businesses, they need to know that they are empowered to ask a guest to move to a different table because they're coughing. They need to know that they're empowered to explain to a guest, this is why we're doing what we're doing. I'm talking a lot about not only contactless preparation and delivery, I'm talking about contactless payments where you don't have to touch somebody's cash, you don't have to touch somebody's credit card.
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking at end-to-end solutions, contactless payments, and from payments to service to delivery. Absolutely believe that shields, the plexiglass shields, are going to have to go up in the kitchen that's not near the stove. The stainless steel shields are going to have to go up near the stove. The movements are going to have to be more planned, not just randomly running across the kitchen. Everybody who's assigned to a particular station is going to have to literally stay in their station.
So you may have do you see a bigger kitchen staff?
I see a bigger kitchen staff, but it's going to be broken out where you're going to have people who might come in for the first 4 hours and then they'll leave. Then the second group will come in for 4 hours and they'll leave. So you won't have as many people in the kitchen at the same time, but that's also to minimize transmissions through the staff.
Yeah. I'm sorry to jump in, but one of the things that popped into my mind as you were saying that, Yolanda, was about the process of transition as well in technology that's going to be implemented inside of the commercial and food spaces. You know how we always used to watch the Jetsons and the robots would be preparing the food, and so this is a very critical point in our history where we determine whether or not humans are actually going to be able to stay inside of those spaces preparing food, which is very concerning because the large majority of our population deals with hospitality, deals with the food and restaurant industry. And so this is really concerning to me. As an environmental scientist, I was sitting here thinking about tools, even in tools. When we're talking about our customers coming inside of the restaurant spaces, we're going to be transitioning from your traditional utensils and probably moving more towards bamboo and wood-based utensils that are going to be easily disposed of and decomposed of. Even when you think about grocery stores where they used to have the hot plate where you can go out there and get your food. Now they're not even allowing for you to get food off of the hot bars or the cold bars. Everything is already prepackaged and contained, which has another environmental impact on how we deal with plastic products. And us preparing to transition to more sustainable practices along that route as well, even when it comes down to getting off of styrofoam, now looking at wood fiber or hemp fiber materials inside of those settings that will allow for us to reduce, again, the contact that we have with those materials that can possibly hold on to those microbial and infectious diseases. It's a big transition about to happen.
It is huge, and one of the things that you mentioned with the food where you go and get the hot, I forgot how you use it. It's similar to a buffet, but you just go and grab the food. Even if it's not a standard that's created by code or by law, I can see people shying away from that. I can see people not wanting to go to buffets. I used to design a lot of buffets back in years ago, and I shied away from buffets the more germophobic I become, the less I want to see or deal with a buffet or deal with anything where there's nonsense going around when it comes to food. And I can see buffets being just gone.
I just read an article this morning. It's a 97 unit restaurant chain called Soup Plantation. They completely have permanently shut down their operations because their concept was based around buffets. I'm advising people to completely cancel any buffet aspect of their operations.
Absolutely.
And I mean, all these internet kitchens, I like the idea of them, but they scare me a little bit too.
Well, ghost kitchens are actually where we're moving. That's the direction.
I do agree, because you and I have been talking about this, but how can I see your kitchen?
It's more of a highly controlled environment, and that's where the communication is going to come into play. Where you talk about you can feel comfortable ordering our food because from the paint on the walls to the materials on the floors and the counters, everything is built to be antimicrobial. These are the practices.
Now I like that.
These are the products that we use. They're all EPA registered. We have our filtration designed to actually remove the particles in the air. The communication, I talked about the messaging in my last article. The mexaging is going to be critical to explain.
So it's going to be kind of like a certification. I can see where and in my article, I talked about all these different materials like you're just saying, but to guarantee that I love the concept of internet restaurants and cloud kitchens. Yes. But one of the things I asked someone today that runs the cloud kitchen was, how do we know? I need to know, and I like what you just said, but I need to see a stamp of approval. Mm-hmm. The one way I was able to make my own judgment on a restaurant, up until now was, number one, I'm always reading clean plates, as you know, and number two, I'm looking at your bathroom. I'm looking at how do you if your bathroom's not clean, to me, your kitchen's not clean. If your lobby is not clean, exactly. If your lobby's not clean, your kitchen's not clean. I've actually, in a few restaurants, asked, can I take a tour of your kitchen? And some places will let you do that. And, because if they're, and depending on who it is, they may shy away from it. And I've done that in more than one state.
Right.
So there's just different things that I'm able to judge how your kitchen level is on what I can see on my own, and I can make my own judgment. Now, if we move more to the cloud kitchen concept, which I like, because I've even designed commissary kitchens, but I need to know food handling practices are really being stressed in these places, because more and more we're not going to be able to see what's going on.
Right. I think one of the biggest things as a consumer is that those things that we allow to get past. You remember how how people are like, oh, I found a hair in my food. Those days are dead.
Those days are over.
All those restaurants who did not have the best sanitation and health practices are going to be dead. I think that food safety and sanitation, especially those inspectors that will be going out there grading, will be thinking in this mindset. And that's why it's so important that we look at the standard operating procedures for every facility. We're going to have to look at the operating emergency procedures for every facility. And it's so important for the head down to understand what the expectations are. What do you do when one of your employees says that they're not feeling well and that they feel like they're feeling asymptomatic or symptomatic with these virus-related illnesses? Don't just take that lightly. Oh, I need you to work on this shift because, so-and-so can't make it. These are things that no longer are just going to be the traditional norms. And so now we have to think collectively from start to finish and be very diligent with implementing that.
And we're going to have to serve safe. It's huge right now. Right now, they're giving free classes. We're going to have to not just have our employees take an 8-hour course and get certified. They're really going to have to. I'm taking the class right now. I get freaked out when I start reading this stuff about serve safe and what goes on in kitchens. But that's going to have to go to another level to me. I think you got to push this. You can't just have your associate learn it, get a passing grade, and keep it moving. To me, they're going to have to apply it.
Good question. I've been listening to this conversation. So when I hear you say this one term I hear is cloud kitchens.
Yeah.
Cloud kitchens. Yeah, cloud kitchens or ghost kitchens. They're all the same concept.
Now, does this mean that we're going to start losing
Oh, you
the
froze.
restaurant experience, the dining experience?
Can you say that one more time, John? I'm sorry, you froze for a second. Go ahead.
Does that mean we're going to see a degradation of the actual restaurant experience? Or my internet connection is unstable. I'm getting a signal here.
No, I can hear you now.
Okay.
I can hear you now.
So you're talking about Grubhub and all that stuff. Is that what I'm hearing?
That's it. Grubhub, Uber Eats, those are what's called third-party delivery services. The cloud kitchen is basically an internet restaurant. It may not have a in-house dining component.
Okay. That's what I thought. Okay.
It is going to have a menu that can be ordered, that can be delivered. The messaging has to be, you can enjoy the quality restaurant experience in your home. That's where the messaging changes for that. And that's where it's critical to explain the practices that you have in the restaurant kitchen.
Wow, that's interesting. The industry is going to see some massive changes then, because I like to eat out. I
do too. I eat out most of the time.
So the food has to be good, and the ambiance of the restaurant has to be good. Your wait staff has to be good to make the total experience right. Because that's just me. Some people they don't care about that. They just want to put their napkin under their chin and eat. That's good. And I'm like that too, especially now since I'm not going to restaurants. But one day I like to go back, to sitting down at a nice restaurant with a nice atmosphere, listen to some good music, have good food. But all these things are going to slowly but surely take on a whole new vibe, a whole new shape. We're all going to have to adjust to it. And my second question is, I'm hearing all these things that are going to have to be implemented. Where's that oversight going to come from?
I personally think, number one, I think restaurants have, because they're really getting a grip on, when you look at what's going on with the food facilities, the better restaurants are looking already at what to do when this all starts to slow down. And I think restaurants are going to start doing it, but I also think it's going to be slowly or maybe quickly implemented into code. I really do. I don't think it's going to just be something that we see slowly. I think it's gonna be a wave that takes place, especially for newer restaurants. I don't know about existing, but I can see changes going right away.
One of the things that I've been talking to restaurant and food business owners about is about how exactly this, how to implement changes quickly and how to make sure that the changes are sticking. I've been talking a lot about digital food safety. There's 3 companies that I've been very closely working with. One is Jolt, Zenput, also RizaPoint. They allow the restaurant to implement checklists, detailed checklists, where when you first come in, you take the employee's temperature. There's a series of things that the employee has to do. And the employee can't just check the list, what we call pencil whipping. The employee can't just check the list and say they're done. They have to take pictures to show that, yes, this surface is clean. And that picture goes to their manager, that picture goes to the management team. The completion of the list has to be done within a certain period of time, or else somebody's getting a text notification to say this person has not completed their checklist, or this person has completed the checklist, but the food's not at the proper temperature. There's a gap in the knowledge or practice area. So I talk a lot about digital food safety. I've been involved with that. I've been helping restaurants implement their checklists, because that's one of the easiest things you can do. If you can have somebody check to make sure the air filter is clean, that's an item that's in the checklist. Maybe the filter would normally be cleaned every 4 months. Did you place the call to have the air filter checked now once a month, or once a week, or once every 2 weeks, whatever the new standard is going to be? So
I like that, and have it
level, yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I've been talking about digital food safety a lot. That's the most basic level. And that is the fastest way that I see to implementing a lot of the practices that's going to happen. And as people get more comfortable through repetition, the practices are going to stick. That's how the practice.
Now, when you said digital, maybe that can, I mean, I know this is a wish list, but if that could be connected with the health department so that they can digitize, salt, pepper, and salt. I'm just using you as an example. As a restaurant, salt, pepper, and salt didn't change their hood filter, or not hood filter. They didn't clean their hood. We were talking about this yesterday. People being a little surprised that there's a time level to changing filters and cleaning out systems.
Grease traps.
Oh dear God.
But so maybe if these systems can be set up electronically, or like you said, technology-wise, where the city or county or state is connected, or whoever's managing all these different restaurants gets a notification, time for salt, pepper, and salt to change their air filters, time for us to, now it's periodic, or when somebody makes a complaint that the health department goes out. And people are literally getting sick from restaurants. I was at the restaurant show last year, and there's actually a website that this guy created, and he's got tons and tons of restaurants on it. It's called iwaspoisoned.com. And you go on there and you report what restaurant made you sick. And it's sad that they had to create that. And again, John, you said you love the dining experience. So do I. But I'm also afraid. At first, when this first started, I said I'm not eating out anywhere, and I can't cook, and that's really scary. And then when Yolanda and I were going back and forth about, people are scared, but you need to understand that it's not all restaurants that are bad, and give them a chance. So I did start. There's a local restaurant I go to a lot, and I trust them. But I was scared to eat anywhere. I was like giving up on some major restaurants that I'm always in. And I'm slowly but surely trusting different restaurants, and now I'm eating out once a week. I was eating out 3 or 4 times a week. That's how bad I was. And ordering Grubhub 3 or 4 times a week. So
my drivers know me by my first name.
Hey, look, when I was in college, there was a restaurant we would call up, they would see the number and they would be like, Middleton?
Yeah.
So they know. And I've always been like that because I can't cook. So I mean, now I have no choice. But the dining experience, it's funny that you said this. Millennials it seems like they're the ones that are kind of moving away from the dining experience so much. I mean, my generation was huge with the whole third place with Starbucks. How many people now you go in Starbucks and you see them with their app in their hand and they're ready to go run in, grab their food and roll. They're not trying to hang out like they used to. And Starbucks got to the point where they made the people that were the mobile pickups, that was the big deal. One of them actually told me, we have to take care of the food for the mobile pickups before we do the people in the restaurant. I told her, I'm leaving, I want my money back. But, to me, it's always been the dining experience, sitting in a restaurant, eating, having that whole, I've made colleagues and friends from meeting them in restaurants, sitting in Starbucks, sitting in different local cafes, talking to people. You see them all the time. But I think that's going to slowly, I saw it changing anyway. I saw it changing before COVID-19 came out. I kind of think that's going to start moving away more and more.
Yeah, I think the traditional standard of eating in spaces is pretty much going to reduce a drastic workforce. I'm a millennial, Lisa.
Sorry.
Now, mind you, these new people, I don't know what they are. Okay, they and I are not the same. But I still enjoy the convenience of going out to dine inside of restaurants. I miss it very much. I think that, as it has been mentioned by everybody here, that those traditions have been taken away. But I think also that in this time we have understand the importance of the nuclear family and are getting back to some traditions that we hadn't seen in a long time because of the convenience of fast food and the convenience of restaurants and being able to dine inside of those environments. And so it only kind of makes sense that we would be pushing to this new technology era in the food spaces, and pending more on those. I was just thinking to myself, like, man, I need to go ahead and subscribe to HelloFresh so that I can get some meals.
I used to subscribe to it. It's great. It's great. But you know what? I was literally crying because I was like a little kid because my birthday started on my birthday. They started shutting everything down. And I had a little gathering planned, and I wanted to have I like to go to restaurants. I like to sit down and talk with people. And I was so upset that I couldn't have my traditional birthday dinner because of this whole COVID-19 thing.
Yeah, I feel like it's just going to be shared space now. It's going to be shared space, and you can have a meal and bring that meal from a prepared kitchen in the back. And you can get it out of the little thing and put it on your tray.
like Horn and Hot used to be. That's how Horn and Hot used to be. My mother always talks about that place, and they have pictures of it online. It used to it was exactly what you just said. You would have a kitchen in the background. They create the food, and you'd go up and you push buttons and tell them what you want, pay for it, and then you take your food out of this little slot and go down and sit down and eat.
I have a question, it's a scenario-based question that kind of triggered a thought process. Earlier, I heard a description of shift work from the back of the house. You have workers come in, work their shift, leave, and others come in. Now, you do that, don't you, contaminants can walk in the door on the clothing of your new kitchen staff. You know what I mean? So it's not just as simple as hand washing. Now you have to worry about the clothing too. So are they going to be in Tyvek suits, or do we? And here's where my expertise comes in. I have an answer for that already. I'm one of those people that I don't like to ask a question I don't have an answer for. So you would have specific path of exit for those finishing their shift, and a specific path for entry. And at the entry point, as they walk through, there's a UV light station, just like you have in the airport. A UV light station that disinfects their clothing as they come in. Now they can do their thing with the hand washing, but you can wash your hands all day long. But if you have like monsters on your hoodie as you walk in, all right, you ain't really doing nothing.
I see it as there's gonna be a serious push for uniforms. There's gonna be lockers in the back. People are gonna have to change into uniforms, and
they should do that now anyway.
They should.
What's happening? That is what has been happening in the better restaurants. There's going to be more of a push for that. I love what John said. So people can't just come in from the street with their uniform on anymore. We're getting the uniforms brought in from linen companies. They're already not only clean but sanitized. Mm-hmm. So you come in, you put on a fresh uniform every day. I've talked to several uniform companies, linen companies, that also are going to be providing masks in different colors to match the chef like jackets or the cook shirts or whatever is being offered to the restaurants now. When we talk about safety is the new hospitality, coined by Al Paris, I love that expression. What does safety feel like to the people? So, John, when you talk about the ambiance is going to change. People are going to have different expectations. People are going to want to see not so much a darker environment. People are going to want to see a brighter environment so they can see that the space looks clean. Mm-hmm. I've actually been talking to a company in Shanghai that makes robots that are being used in restaurants and in hospitals to deliver food.
Actually, there's a sushi restaurant in Philly right now that's doing no contact handoff with a robot.
Yes.
Do we have to tip the robot?
No, everybody wants. Everybody wants tips no matter what. You tip to people whether you get served.
I ain't tipping a robot.
It'll already be on your bill. You just click it, automatically come up. It's contactless. It's beautiful.
But now going back to the atmosphere of restaurants.
Yes.
There was a restaurant. I think it's in Europe. I don't want to say the wrong country, but I have it on my Facebook page. They came up with the concept of, okay, you trust the person you're eating with, and it's this intimate dining setting, but they still had the social distancing. So they got these greenhouses, these little small greenhouses that covered the 2-table seating.
It's an Amsterdam.
I saw that.
Outside dining. You saw that?
Yeah, I saw it. Yeah.
It's beautiful. It's in Amsterdam.
Yeah, that's where it was. Okay, that's where it was. And I was very surprised, but I thought it looked really nice the way they had it set up.
Yes.
But it keeps so you're now you trust who you're going to eat with, but everybody else you don't necessarily trust.
That's actually sad if you think about it.
It's the way our world. It's sad. You know what's sad, John? 75,000 people right now are dead.
Yeah.
That's true.
And the environments that they. A lot of it was contact spread, and the environments that they got to spread from. That's what's sad.
Yeah, and more than anything, it's about those essential workers.
Yes,
you know,
that too.
And the practices and policies in place for those essential workers out the gate. As a person who worked inside of a laboratory, we know what our proper protective equipment is inside of a laboratory setting. And it's kind of like the same thing when you're dealing with the airport. You know that there are levels to states of emergency. Every company should have a scope of standard practices when it comes down to emergency. There's no reason why the post office does not have proper protective equipment for the employees. There's no reason why bus drivers don't have proper isolation from the riders, and then to the point where you have to put a caution tape and put people in the back of the bus. That makes no sense to me. You know, there's no reason why city workers don't have proper PPE when they're handling things that have tetanus and have all sorts of additional viruses. They come in contact with feces on a regular basis, and yet they aren't properly given the solutions that they need to clean those surfaces. So we have to look now at our elected officials and start wondering, what have y'all been doing all this time to make it to the point where these individuals will come in contact and be at risk inside of these federally funded, state-funded environments where these practices are inside of your manuals, inside of your handbooks, and not being implemented on a day-to-day basis, are not being retrained on a day-to-day basis. That's where the problem is.
And even private companies have to do the same thing.
Absolutely.
Private companies, I mean, we're governed by well, not my industry, but the construction industry is governed by a safety practicing OSHA. And again, all of these standards every profession should have a standard. Why is it that my profession doesn't have a safety standard? Why aren't we governed by OSHA as well? I have to stand on roofs. I always thought about that, but I'm always scared of a lot of unsafe conditions. But I think that outside of just looking at restaurants and the way they're built and the way they're all the materials that you're going to use, I think it's going to go back to what you and Yolanda both said. It's going to be a management practice. It's going to be standards that have to be set into place. And then all the different things that we're talking about are going to just have to be different ideas that can go under these standards. Do you want your kitchen to be designed with the most antimicrobial, germ-free materials that clean the air, systems that clean the air with these UV systems? If you want the best for your customers, if you want the best for your frontline workers, then to me, yes, you should want this. Yes, there's if right now kitchens, you preparing food that's going to go inside somebody's body, they should be trying to be the cleanest they can be already. But now post-COVID, they should be trying to not only just be clean, but find ways to get rid of diseases or to implement or to lower the possibility of diseases being spread if they come into contact with people. That's what's huge. How do we manage this? And so all these ideas I think are great, especially out the UV. I wanted to ask you this because I don't want it to leave my mind. Does that harm your physical, like, how does that harm you?
It depends on the intensity. They come at different wavelengths. So I knew you were going to ask me that too. So the wavelength for the UV light that will go inside, let's say inside the HVAC unit, that can be a higher wavelength because it's not making contact with a human. Because what that UV light does is kind of rearrange the molecular structure of the contaminant. And makes it like, let's say
that might rearrange your molecular structure
under a certain wavelength. That's true, and so it all there's a piece of equipment for the right application. For example, let's go back to the changing of the guard for the back of the house workers. So let's say we don't have the separate entrance and exits, but they have the uniforms in their locker. There should be sanitized. There's a mobile wand. You can wand those as well and sanitize.
Okay.
As opposed to having them walk through. Just like when you go through the airport, instead of going through that full body scanner, like if you beep, they wand you. They bring out.
Yeah, they don't just wand you. Trust me, they do other things to you that's offensive.
Yeah. So there's no answer for everything. But let me say this. I want to be this voice of what if. Now we have standards and measures now that get ignored on a daily basis.
Yes.
Because all these things have cost factors associated with them. And especially in the US, everything is based on dollar. Everything is based on greed. And these people, after a while, they're going to take shortcuts because they want to keep that money in their pocket. That's why I was asking the questions about oversight. Because if you don't make somebody do what's right, they're not going to do it.
I totally agree. And even the people that make them do things right, because of bureaucracy, they're not even governing a lot of these places as much as I should never look at clean plates three times in a row and see the same restaurant on there, but I do. Mm-hmm. And that's what's scary. And that's why I came up with a list of materials. But so at least if I know your restaurant use all these antimicrobial, at least that's helping a little bit. But still, like you said, where's the oversight? If your management is set up where they want to do it, yes. But we know, we deal with people that open restaurants all the time. Everybody doesn't have that mindset. Some people, they know how to cook. They want to open a restaurant. They want to make money. And that's what they're concerned with. They're not concerned with all these other. But I think those kind of smaller scale restaurants maybe go by the wayside. And you might have the bigger restaurants where people are dealing more with these issues because the consumer is going to want it. It really goes back to the consumer. What are we going to demand? As consumers, what are we going to demand?
Consumers,
we have to educate the consumer.
And transparency. When I talk about messaging, I talk about communicating what measures you're taking to make sure. When I talk about the digital food safety solutions, when I talk about the digital checklist, to make sure that employees are doing what they're supposed to do every single day. And if they have to take pictures, and they're taking pictures of a person walking through the UV light sanitizing or being wanded down, and they're showing that they didn't put their uniform on until they came into the building, and the uniform was freshly cleaned and sanitized from the linen company. So these are all practices, just like everybody had to get used to new practices through going through airports after 9/11.
Yes, that's true. That's very true.
Have to get used to new practices coming after this. And when you talk about the larger restaurants, the chain restaurants, I talk a lot about the QSR, the quick service restaurant model. They already are doing a lot of the things. Now, they obviously have a lot more capital then the smaller independent restaurants. But I tell people all the time, you can always model your concept after the QSR concept, because they're going to be the first ones to put these things in place because they have the money to do these things.
And those concepts are scalable, right?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. See,
No,
right.
John, you said you have to educate the consumer.
Yeah.
I totally agree, and unfortunately, everybody's not going to want to be educated, and I guess they'll be the ones that will go to the restaurants that are not implementing these systems if it's not being enforced.
Well,
And
that's the thing at the end of the day. At the end of the day, if you're not, scripture tells us, my people perish from the lack of knowledge. Okay?
I agree. Yes.
And so either you're going to be the fool and keep on doing your everyday activities like ain't nothing wrong because you don't see this microbug of 57 nanometers big, this aerosolized, or you're going to take the necessary time to educate yourself, to become more aware about what you can do to prevent yourself from being exposed. And I think that's one of the biggest problems with this generation of this technology oversaturated generation of us. And I can go back to when we first got the cell phone. We have information in the palm of our hands. Information in the palm of our hands. That is ignorance. That is ignorance to not prepare yourself. And the same thing for a small business owner as well.
I agree with you, but I'm a little scared of the ignorance, because this is where this disease spread from, the ignorance. We see people, we can turn on the news and you hear people all the time saying everybody's got coronavirus. It's not, I heard a mayor from a city in the Midwest say that everybody's got it. So what's the big deal? Why are we doing all this stuff? But that, unfortunately, now we're in a situation where that gets other people sick. Even if you decide to be ignorant and you're going to perish because of lack of knowledge, you may cause someone else to perish. So that's why I really hope that this becomes standards, this becomes management mindset. The ones that don't want to comply will go by the wayside. Most of the consumers will become more educated, make more demands, and that restaurants will just fall in lockstep with this, because just like Yolanda said, after September 11th, we had standards that we had to follow in airports. Now, of course, they're governed by the federal government. This is totally different. Restaurants are independent, so it's not going to all be the same. But there's going to be changes in our society because of all of this. There's going to be restaurants that are going to have to function differently. We see laws right now that exist that restaurants don't follow. I mean, the cigarette law. I walked into a restaurant and the guy was standing in front of the doorway, blocking the door, smoking a cigarette. And we all know you're supposed to be 20 feet away. But what did I do as a consumer? I went into the restaurant and told the owner, if I see that, I said, I'm not going to say anything right now, but if I see that one more time, I'm calling the health department and reporting them. Because you can't put people's lives in jeopardy because of lazy employees and poor management. It's not something that we should allow to go on.
Yeah, and that's one of the biggest things that we've seen inside of the market here in Illinois, especially with the new ordinance implementing. You cannot walk into a facility without a face mask on. At this point, businesses are going to be losing their licenses. And that's where it's going to be like you have to fall in line or you don't have to fall in line. And at that point, they're going to be responsible for educating their clientele base about what the new requirements are. And that is also going to, again, start with the top-down management practices. If you're a business, your small establishment, and even on the small food trucks is what I was kind of thinking about, is like, if you start off on the right foot, and you have consistency from your whole chain of command all the way down to your consumer, then it will get a little bit more easier and more easier for you to adapt in your practices. But it's going to come down to law and legislation and ordinances being implemented on the state level, on the local level, that's going to take away your licenses. I do not see a lot of the businesses within my communities coming back. due to the fact of the matter that they're not going to be able to comply with what is going to be implemented.
And that might not be so bad because, again, you're dealing with people's life. You're dealing with people's health, safety, and welfare.
The hot spots.
But this is, keep in mind, and Yolanda, you know this to be the case, and you, John, too. These food facilities are not just restaurants. We were in a kitchen yesterday that was a kitchen that was an accessory of another facility. So there are already, we have to educate not just the restaurants that's selling food, because food handling laws go down to kitchens where people consume food in the public. So this has to go into the kitchens of church kitchens, of hospitals have little kitchens. Every places that have accessory kitchens or accessory food facilities, they have to implement them, and it has to be pushed, stressed, and like almost beat into people's heads, because food goes into our bodies on a regular basis, and it's one of the biggest things that can kill us.
I love that. And I think each of us and people who are part of the food community, the management of food communities, we have to be the ones to go into churches, church kitchens. And I personally don't mind, and I'll explain it in a way that makes them want to do it.
But actually, it's a good way. Help them understand.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But authoritatively, not just a suggestion. This is something
absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I tell people this is not just food, it's an experience. That's my tagline for Salt, Pepper, and Soul. You're not just feeding the person anymore. You're taking care of their health and well-being with your food. When people share food, John talked about the experience of sharing food in an environment. When you share food, now you have to be concerned about the safety, health, and well-being of the person that you are serving, the person you're dining with, everything about that. I love that restaurant in Amsterdam. I think it's beautiful. I think any restaurant with any kind of outdoor space needs to try to implement something similar. I want to see something like that in the interior, if that's possible. I want to see how they're going to do bars that have been typically crowded. The seats have to be 6 feet apart. People can't be 15 deep at a bar. But I mean,
and that's going to be so hard with these happy hours where, people like to, that's the environment people love.
Want to jam as many people in that space as possible and keep the drinks going.
Those days are over.
And actually, those days aren't supposed to exist right now anyway, because there's occupancy levels for restaurants.
That goes out the window.
Right. But we go back to compliance. This is something we know. There's occupancy levels for restaurants that people don't. I go into restaurants and I get claustrophobic sometimes, and I know that they probably got approved for a certain amount of seats, and then as soon as that they got their certificate of occupancy, they jammed more seats in there.
Oh, absolutely.
This has to change.
Listen, I hear this saying all the time, and sometimes it if they say it to me early enough, I give them their retainer back. Here's the saying I get all the time: I'd rather ask for forgiveness than permission.
Yes, I hear that a lot too.
I hear that. If I hear that relative to a certain subject, I promise you I give them a retainer back.
Yeah, you can't do that when it comes to public safety. You cannot. I hear that with certain things, but not when it comes to the health, safety, and welfare of people. You just can't do that.
I don't want my name attached to this. Nope.
And see, this is where my concern comes down to the reopening of our communities and our neighborhoods is about, again, people taking that responsibility seriously. And it's almost to the point where without you taking it seriously, there will be consequences and repercussions, not only of fines, but also you may get charged.
Mm-hmm.
You may get charged.
And maybe that's something that they need to start, that maybe with the reopening, like you said, that should be something that's immediate, where if you're not following, just like now, where people are implementing certain kind of fines, if you're not, you can't come in. I'm in a community right now where they won't let you in the restaurant, any stores, unless you have a mask on. It's just, get mad if you want, you're not coming in here.
Yeah, well, listen, didn't somebody get killed in Detroit over that?
Somebody somebody got killed and they got rid of the they decided not to. That's where I think it's sad that we have to now bow down. Yeah, I think it's sad that somebody's going to kill somebody for something that silly. But the fact that we're going to pull a law away because somebody got, well, I mean, I don't want to say that we shouldn't.
Yeah, I know it's tough.
About somebody dying, but
Listen, everything that we're talking about is necessary. We all, as professionals, we all know it's necessary, but it's disruptive. Let's be honest about it. It's disruptive, and we're going to get a lot of pushback from it. A lot.
I can push back. You know it. We can push back now because of requirements for food facilities. I mean,
we're for a fight.
It's going to get worse. I mean, it's going to get worse. But that's where we go back to the management, the following guidelines, the having standards set in place, the laws, and to me, the enforcement, the elected officials are really going to have to push. And politics right now make me sick to the stomach. But, it's going to have to be something that's at the forefront of people's mindset. One thing is good. We've seen so many health departments on TV from all over the country in the last 6 weeks that maybe people will realize these people are important in our society.
Yeah.
These people are important in our society. But we went over our time, but it's been such a great conversation. I've been so happy to have this great group of people from my community. I call you guys my community, and I'm so happy to have this conversation. I wish we could continue. I mean, we can continue, but as far as our show is concerned, I'm going to have to wrap the show up because we've been over our time. This may have to be broken up into 2 shows. It was such great. Oh my goodness, it was such awesome conversation. I want to thank each and every one of you. If you want to give I'm going to give each person a couple of minutes to just give your last comments of what you see or what you want to see as far as the post-COVID kitchen operations or design is concerned. Start with John.
From my standpoint, as an MEP engineer, what's going to have to happen from my standpoint, we're going to have to get involved in the process early on, from conversations with the chef, the architect, the kitchen designer, and the people on the health management side. It has to be a collaborative effort. Otherwise, the whole system's going to fall apart. Because I have to design systems that supports what the chef wants, how the kitchen line works, how the facility is going to operate, and what's going to adhere to upcoming health codes. Even before it happens, we all know what needs to happen from a common sense level, professional level. We all have to really tighten up our teamwork game to make this, and kind of, as they say, get out in front of it. That's what we're going to have to do. So typically, as it stands now, I really don't get involved until I get the kitchen layout. Show me the kitchen line. Where's the equipment?
I was just telling somebody that the other day. The engineer doesn't come in until we get to a certain point.
Just give me the plan. I'll make it work. No, that's gone. Now I need to and I work this way anyway. I'm a visual learner, so I need to understand what's happening on a 360-degree level. I need to know what the chef is thinking about, what the chef wants to do, how the chef wants to operate in his or her space, how that space is going to be designed from an architectural level, and then now I have to design my systems around what works from a health protection standpoint. It's going to have to be that way, and everybody has to be on the same accord, the same mindset, or it's not going to work.
I completely agree, and I thank you for saying that because that's one of the things. Not to plug our book again, but that's we talk about that in the book. The menu. This is actually Yolanda's quote. The menu is the center of the plate because that's where you start. And I like that you're an engineer that wants to get them. I have engineers that tell me, "Well, call me once you have a layout," and that's going to, like you said, that's something that if we're thinking about implementing this from a thought process and a safety standpoint, we're going to have to start from the beginning.
Yeah.
Victoria, give me some of your thoughts.
Oh, I can go on for days about my thoughts, but I just want to just look at just 2 of the key components from naturally urban standpoint when it
Oh no, Victoria froze. Victoria.
Comes down
There she
to
goes. She's back.
Victoria, let's
I'm
start
back.
again. I'm sorry, you froze for a second. So let's try it again. Sorry.
All right, let me see. Do I got some stable internet now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, awesome. I just wanted to just come in from what we stand on as our primary principles, which are advocacy, training, and education. And not only that, but also renovation. But John has already touched on that in that category. So more than anything, it's just going to come down to how we implement our practices from the start to the finish, from the top all the way down. It is so essential that these corporations, these businesses, and spaces take into consideration their responsibility to the holistic approach of their facilities, making sure that their employees are trained, that they are aware of their responsibility and obligation to be truthful and honest throughout the process, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
And that not only that, but they're following the guidelines that they put in place, because that's what's going to be for safer practices. And not only that, but also looking at the sustainable practices they can implement inside of their facilities to reduce the contact that they're going to have to come in contact with. For example, utilizing hand-free wash stations where they can actually do arm handles where you're coming out of the bathroom facility, touchless paper towels. Those are things that are currently in place right now that most restaurant facilities don't even have inside of it.
Yes, that should be standard now.
That should be required. That should be required. The foot hooks that allow for you to pull the door out. These are things that are simple, automated systems. Even now, I don't have to use my debit card because now I can use the smart pay system, or I can use a touchscreen. Just new practices to implement. There are just minimal changes that we can probably do even now to reduce the contact and risk associated with transmitting this virus.
I agree. Like existing changes that we could just put into place right away. And it's not that expensive to do some of the things you just named.
Absolutely not.
Now, one thing, the paper towel thing drives me nuts.
I know paper towel, but even using a hand-free dryer. Now they have full sink areas where you have soap, you have water, and you have the air dryer all on that full system.
That's something.
The consumption of water.
You just said something I have to talk to John about. Oh my goodness! I don't want to.
I'm sitting here biting my tongue.
This is our ending. This is our ending. But I'm sorry. I have to interrupt our ending to go back to John real quick about what you just said.
I hate them. That's my answer.
So, John, you must have you read about the fecal matter being transferred?
Flying around, yeah.
I didn't have to read about it. I know how air works.
Oh my goodness.
But that's even important on the taking the 35 to 45 seconds to properly soap and lather and wash your fingers and your hands.
Yeah. I agree with all of that, but the whole idea of those air machines now and the fecal matter flying around in the bathroom.
I already knew that. I hate those.
Oh goodness. Okay, I'm sorry that I went off the
and they're high velocity too. Those you know how fast that air comes out? They basically plaster that crap on your hand.
Lord. I'm getting the skeevies thinking about it, but I'm sorry to interrupt our ending by saying that. But as soon as Victoria mentioned it, I thought it, and John, and I'm looking at John right above Victoria. Then I thought about that, and I was like, oh, I remember that article, and I'm a little freaked out by it.
But my point is that there are safer practices that can be implemented just in.
Victoria,
you froze again.
You froze again, Victoria. I'm sorry. I do agree with you. There are safer practices that can be implemented right away. Victoria froze. I don't know if she's going to be able to come back because she dropped off too.
Dropped out.
Okay, we're going to go to Yolanda. We're going to let Yolanda give your last words, and hopefully Victoria will come back on before this is over with. If not, we'll just close up with the ending of the show. But go ahead, Yolanda. Give us your final words.
My final word, I definitely agree with a higher level of collaboration that has to happen earlier in the process for establishing a new restaurant, a new food business. But there also has to be ongoing compliance. And that's where the digital food safety solutions come in. I am always talking about technology enabled solutions. I live and breathe that. I've got 20 years in software development. That's where that comes from in the food space. But I'm talking about and I'm researching and I'm actively talking with companies that offer these solutions. And I love what you said about taking it to a different level where the health department can be notified when things are not completed. And believe me when I tell you, I'm going to be pursuing that angle. And I talk to restaurants about, and I've been writing about this in my articles about, I've been looking at the practical level. How can restaurants and food businesses implement these things every day and make sure to maintain compliance? When you talk about a digital checklist where somebody can't just whip through it, they have to actually take a picture and show that something was clean, that a task was completed. This is how once the habits become ingrained, once people know they have to complete the digital checklist, once they know they have to supply proof, this is where the new habits are going to form, and the new habits have to form. The new habits are going to have to form quickly. Originally, people talked about 21 days to form a habit. I've been talking to more psychiatrists. They're talking about 66 days to form a habit. After the first 30 days, you kind of give people a little bit of leeway for the first 30 days, but then you come in with stronger messaging. You come in with stronger messaging, a little bit more enforcement, but you keep consistent. Maintain consistency, maintain compliance, tie your messaging into everything that's going on. So all the employees understand why they have to do what they're now being asked to do. So the consumers, the guests understand why you're doing these things, why they're going to see higher prices on the menu, because you're doing these things to keep them safe. So I see everything is being tied in together, a higher degree of collaboration, and more, the messaging is also going to be more important. So that's where I get into the food safety, the strategic planning is closely tied to the messaging, and the restaurant technology. Those are the three cornerstones of Salt, Pepper, and Soul. And I incorporate that into every conversation and to every interaction that I have with food business owners.
And it seems like we kind of have a synergy when it comes to the concept of the planning and the building of facilities, because we all talk about planning, number one, is key, but we all talk about educating ourselves with the chef, the operations, and the menu. And that's so key. And we've met with people where we try to talk about the menu and they don't want to discuss the menu. They just want to jump to the facility. But that's so key in everything, including your operations and your functions and your management. I would say my final words are conversations like this, learning and education, and getting as much information as we can, and not only just getting information, but sharing information with our clients, with our community, with our leaders. And I love what you said about being an advocate. I will be an advocate right along with you, especially if you're talking about our local health department. I will fight with you to see if we can come up with some concepts and make some changes. I'm right on board. I'm right behind you with all of that, because that's so key, especially in wanting to maintain your lifestyle of loving to dine out, but also wanting to make sure you're safe and you're healthy with what you do when you dine out. So I'm just so happy that I had the panel that I had with me today. I thank you all. I thank you so much, especially John, because you haven't been in our connections previously, but I think now you've made a good contact, because Yolanda's a great person in planning and building facilities. She's a good person to be connected with. Victoria's a good person when it comes to the science behind it and also the management behind it. I think we all are pretty good when it comes to the management behind it. So I think we should keep this conversation going, keep the synergy going with what we've talked about here. And maybe if we can take it back to our own other communities and spread the word and try to get people to understand this is so important. Lives are at stake. And again, I'm grateful. Thank you for having you here. We want to invite everybody to like and subscribe to this video. If you just make your comments below in the comment section on YouTube. If you are looking at this on another platform, feel free to go to our YouTube channel, like and subscribe it, and we invite you to come out and look at our other shows that we have. All season long, we've been talking with different professionals about the planning and building of food facilities. And I'm so happy that we had the opportunity to take this to another level and look at what the future is going to be for planning and building. And I'm also going to look to making some changes in our book. I'm looking in the future to maybe adding something about safer kitchens in the book, and maybe I can get you guys to come in and give your input if you're interested in being a part of the next rollout of a complete guide to creating tasty spaces. But again, I thank you, and